Hello, how's everyone doing? I'm not I haven't been saying anything. Yo, what's up? It's your boy. It's Clive, back at it again. It's been a minute. I think it's been one entire week since I streamed, which was not what I intended. I intended to stream on Monday or Tuesday, but I didn't. And now it's Thursday. And I'm driving off to twitchcon in like a couple hours, so I'll only be on for a little bit. But I wanted to check in because I'll be away all weekend, essentially. So I wanted to make sure I checked in at least once before, and it wasn't a whole week without going live. Extra large 100% stream. I have not committed to that today. Not today. One of these days, sure. I do also want to try and finish Shrek Swamp Kart Speedway, the only Shrek game that I DNF'd. Unlucky. Lego Shrek guy. I hope so. I hope no one's taken that mantle from me. Has someone made a Lego Shrek game? If not, what are you doing? Someone needs to. I voted then passed away from the power of democracy. Pretty much. To be fair, I didn't actually... So, I left on Thursday to go and vote. But I didn't actually vote on Thursday because I was like... I knew that the consulate closed at 5. And that's what I was basing it on. But I was like, when I got off stream, I was like, maybe I should call ahead just to make sure that they're not going to turn me away when I get there. It wasn't like an issue. So I called up, and the consulate, the Australian consulate phone is extremely unhelpful. They were like, well, is your question about like getting a passport? Press 1. If it's about visas, press 2. For all other inquiries, send us an email at this address and we'll get back to you within 1 business day. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work for me right now. That's not what I'm looking for. And then I kept looking, I kept Googling because I was just like, I just don't want to drive over and then like have it turn out that I can't vote. And as it turned out, I found a page that said, even though the consulate closed at 5, the voting stops at 4. So I did essentially, and at this point it was like 3:57 or something like that. It was really close. I was just like, all right, well, okay, it's not going to be today. I'll have to do it tomorrow. Even though I was trying to do it a day early just to be safe, I did have the next day. So then literally first thing next morning, I got out at like 8:50, 8:40 something, and I went out and voted. Got it all sorted. But yeah, it's just kind of funny that I ended the stream to be like, I'm gonna vote, didn't vote. I actually voted the next morning. I'm still on about the voting. It's only because someone asked. It's not because I'm like, I wasn't trying to make a big deal out of it. So someone mentioned it, and I was like, well, there is actually kind of a funny story here. So no, I'm not. I don't think it's a big deal that I voted. I'm just telling a story. Did you get a sausage? No, I didn't. A friend and I joked that I should have been like, hey, where's the democracy sausage? And but we never did. I guess there wouldn't have been anything that would have been gained from doing so. The consulate is smaller than I thought it would be. I'm used to, where I grew up in the nation's capital of Australia. The embassies are all in these huge mansions in a really affluent suburb. Like you'll go to the top of the hill, it'll be a huge mansion, and it'll say at the front like Embassy of Sri Lanka or something like that. So I'm kind of used to that. But I guess because it's a consulate, it's not an embassy. It's basically just an office inside a skyscraper. Like the skyscraper has a bunch of other businesses in it, and you just kind of go up to one of the floors and go into one of the offices, and that's the consulate. That's the whole thing. Did I vote Shrek? Yeah, Shrek is the next Prime Minister. Did I miss the Shrekathon? Gosh, yes, by many weeks, in fact. The Shrekathon ended over 2 weeks ago. It's all the VODs are on YouTube now. I'm gonna put out another Discord notification. Alright, done. Have you ever seen the North Korean embassy in the UK? It's just a random house. I haven't. Should we actually look at that? Hang on. Let me get my desktop up and running. I was abroad. Don't worry, we will do similar stuff. I'd like to, as I mentioned earlier, I would like to try an 100% run of Shrek on the Xbox, not Shrek Extra Large, because Shrek on the Xbox does not have any 100% runs. So no matter what run I do, I will get world record. Even if it takes like 28 hours, I will get world record. And I would like to beat Shrek Swamp Kart Speedway one of these days, so yeah. I used to be asleep when your stream was up due to 12-hour difference between us. Yeah, I mean, that's an issue. Time zones are hard when you're it's really hard, unless you do stream all day, it's really hard to cover all time zones. Basically, you can only cover 2 regions at any given time. There's, if you stream US morning, you get US morning and EU evening, but then you completely miss out Australia, New Zealand, Asia, essentially. Or you can stream US evening and get Australia or Asia morning, but you completely miss out on EU. Yeah, there's basically no time where you can get all 3 regions. I've thought about this before because it's like, well, it'd be nice to, you know, if I could, but no, essentially, there's no. You might get like an hour or so that just about overlaps between all 3 time periods, but yeah, it's not ideal. Which US morning? These are like 6-hour spans of time here that I'm talking about. Do a staggered stream. Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that, like doing I know some streamers that do a 2-hour stream in the morning and a 2-hour stream in the evening. I don't know, I feel like I like to just, that often doesn't work well for me, that I like to just kind of do it all together. But what was nice about the Shrekathon is it did demonstrate that I could stream for like all day. Before then, I wasn't sure if I was actually like capable of doing that. That was a kind of nice way to learn that I could. Just stream 24/7? Good idea. I mean, I probably should stream more because like I do a lot of projects, and in some ways, you know, some of these projects will turn into videos, but some of them won't, and they might be interesting even if they're not substantial enough to turn into a video. They might be interesting for people to watch, or they might be worthwhile people watching. So it is something I've thought about that I should, you know, it probably isn't a bad idea to just get in the habit of streaming everything. All right, I'm looking up the Embassy of North Korea in London. Someone mentioned that earlier. Here we go. Oh wow! You know, it's a nice house. It seems. It's not the shack I was expecting by the explanation. It's not bad. It's not bad. If we go to there's this one road. Look, I think this is relatively safe because I don't live here anymore, and I'm not like none of my family lives here anymore. So I'm going to show you O'Malley. I didn't live in O'Malley. I'm just talking about Canberra in general. That like none of my family lives here anymore, so I don't think it's like a problem to show this. But I remember somewhere along here. You're driving along this road on the left side, obviously, because it's Australia, and eventually you get to this area. Wait, where? Oh, what? I'm completely lost in my own old neighborhood. Oh, I think it's over here. It's behind these trees somewhere. There's this huge house that I always like. When we would drive on this road, there's this huge house in the distance, and I always wondered, like, what is it? And then it turned out it was some embassy. Oh, I might already be past it. Hello, Mr. Discount Markiplier. It's a me. I'm a Lego Island guy. I'm Discount Markiplier. I guess it's been several years since I've... Here we go. Yeah. I was so impressed when I was a kid on my way to school. I was so impressed when when we would drive through the this neighborhood, and I would say, oh wait, I just saw it. And I would see this huge house in the distance with these big glass windows facing the front. And I was like, who lives there? I want to live there. That's gonna be me one day. But then, when I got a driver's license and actually was able to drive up to it, I did. And I discovered I'm pretty sure it is just some embassy for some country. No idea. But I remember, yeah, it was always like every day on the way to school, we would drive past and be like, whoa! What's that? Yeah. The Embassy of Nepal marked on the map? It could be. The thing is, there's a lot of embassies in this area. So the fact that it's showing one, like, this whole area, yeah, Embassy of Iran, Lebanese Embassy, that could be the Embassy of Nepal, Bulgaria. There's a lot that it's not showing. Basically, Cuba, Kuwait, yeah, basically this whole, Venezuela, this whole suburb is basically rich people and embassies. So I have no idea exactly. I don't remember exactly which one that one was. It's one of these for sure. Why are there so many embassies in the suburb? I think it's because it's a wealthy suburb. So like because it's kind of, hang on, we can get the topography of this, I'm sure. Terrain, wait, not terrain, satellite. There's a way to get, I never quite remember exactly how. Globe view, there we go. So this is, this is what counts as a hill in Canberra. And I think because it's on a hill, it has slightly, or maybe it was just designated as such. Basically, all the houses here are kind of big and fancy. So I think because they're big and fancy houses, it just kind of naturally became the hub of embassies because they could afford a big mansion. I guess now that we can see this 3D view, we can actually figure out what this is. I've never gotten this view before. What is it? It's what flag is that? Oh, it's the United Arab Emirates. Okay, well I guess that makes sense. That's another country with a lot of money. Okay, so it's the embassy of the UAE. Music is loud. I guess it would depend on your headphones. You turn it down a little. Some headphones have more of a compressor effect than other headphones. Yo! Giovanni GZ, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub for 2 months. I really appreciate it. Also, my evidently my bot is down because I didn't get a notification. I can get that up. I frequently forget to start the bot. Yeah, there we go. It's up. It is just too loud. Well, I can never tell because I would always mix things for the music to be around -30 decibels, and then everyone's like, "It's too quiet," and that's exactly the kind of the level I have it for my videos. So maybe my music is always too quiet in all my videos. So I started turning it up a little bit more, and now everyone's saying it's too loud. It's almost like it's almost like there's some specific value that I haven't figured out yet. Yeah, perceptual volume, that's true. That's quite true as well. How much have I missed? Not much. I've only been on for about 15 minutes. What am I doing today? Nothing exciting. I'm just kind of I'm on for about an hour or so until well, maybe 2 until I start driving to TwitchCon. Can we fast forward the political content? Is that what this is? Is this political content? Look, I'm just chatting. I'm just hanging out. We will look at the .NET stuff pretty soon. Yo, Goku works. Thank you so much for the Prime sub. Thanks for the 3 months. Maybe they're a volume toggle. Well, actually, what's interesting is, hang on, real quick. I'm going to talk about this just because I think it's kind of funny. I will pause the music for it. If you remember, if you were here for Shrekathon Day 5, as in the final day, towards the end, as we were counting down to 0, I started playing the final countdown, which is a copyrighted song, and I don't really worry too much about copyrighted songs on Twitch, just because Twitch doesn't care, and I know that the VOD gets muted, but Sir Kane, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub for 2 months. I really appreciate that. Hell yeah. Wait, what was that? It was oh, it's a dog with a fry box on his head. Excellent. So I don't worry too much about it, because I always record all my VODs locally, and locally they're always I always have desktop audio and microphone in a separate track. So when I go to upload like the VOD or a clip, if I need to mute something, I can. If I just need to mute the music for a little bit. I don't like to mute the whole desktop audio. Some people split it up so that the Twitch VOD only gets their mic and gets no desktop audio. I don't really like doing that, because then I feel like if anyone watches the VOD back, they miss some of the context. Like if we're watching something or listening to something, or something makes sound, or I'm talking to someone on Discord, which I don't do very often, but if I am, then they get completely cut out of the VOD. I feel like that's kind of a shotgun approach to the problem. So yeah, I don't worry too much about it on Twitch. I worry about it on YouTube, because that's where you get content ID'd and shit like that. And you know, that is exactly what happened when when I played the final countdown on day 5 of the Shrekathon. I uploaded the whole VOD, and it basically blocked the whole thing. YouTube did. They said it's a what is it, 6.5 hour VOD, and I play a couple minutes of, oh sorry, you can hear notification sounds. I just muted it. You can hear about 3 minutes of the final countdown, and because of that, the entire VOD gets blocked worldwide. Classic YouTube story. So I'm like, all right, well, fair enough. I'll go in, I'll get the desktop audio track, and I'll mute that part of the sound. Fine, no more copyrighted song. I re-upload it. Turns out they're still pissed off, because not only did I have the song in there, I just played the music video, and turns out they've even ID'd the music video. So even though there's no song, the video is a problem. So I had to go in and then I had to overlay something on the video, which because I can basically throw anything on there, I just mocked up this random graphic, and so this is now. The entire this is what I had to do to get away with using the final countdown as a joke. I had to fix it. I had to fix it in post to get this VOD back on YouTube. So yeah, good times. I do not owe you 5 minutes from the subathon time. And look, it ended at 0. It actually stopped. It's only because I didn't write code to keep it at 0 that eventually people donated and it went back up. But that doesn't count, okay? It doesn't count. Anyway. We love New Rodent. Hell yeah. Yeah, I started using it in my videos. It was kind of an in-joke with my friends that it's like, oh, it's the Japan font. They use it in all their games and marketing. And I found that it's kind of useful, because my normal font, which is Grow Bold, my brand font, it's nice for branding, but it's big, and if you're trying to do like a technical explanation, it's a bit too big. So I started using that. I kind of alternate between these two fonts. This is for branding or for like jokes and stuff, but I use the the Nintendo font for any explanations. Yeah. Oh yeah, I could use a MIDI rendition. Like it's yeah, probably could have. But the only problem with Grow Bold I find nowadays is that everyone uses it. I feel like I see this font in thumbnails all the goddamn time. No, I'm probably not going to find one like by accident, but I feel like I see this font so much that I'm kind of like mad that not mad. I'm just kind of like, I feel like I've become a cliche. And here's something really interesting about this font though. If you want to know some lore about this font, there are two versions of it. There's the free version that you get off Defont. And this only contains, I believe, like Latin characters, only alphanumeric. But then there's Growbold Pro, which contains a bunch of Unicode stuff, or like stuff for other languages. Growbold Pro, I think it's like one word, yeah. Yeah, so this has a bunch more stuff in it, and in theory, this is the one you're supposed to use for like commercial situations. Of course, no one does, and you can tell no one does because there's a really interesting factoid about the Growbold font. So if I type Matt Casey ! You notice there's kind of an awkward space on the exclamation point between, like, there's just a little bit of a gap between the exclamation point and the letter before it. This gap is not present on the Pro version. If I can type in a sample, there we go. It's normal. So, if you want to know whether someone paid for this font or not, the answer is, if you can see this gap, they definitely didn't pay for it. Now, they could have used, they could have altered it, they could have shifted it over a little bit to make it, to fit this. But, essentially, if you ever see this gap, you know they didn't pay for it. Can you send me the Pro TTF for no reason at all? Oh god. I have had people be like, hey, can you send me like your background and stuff? I'm like, where did you get it? That's usually what they first ask. Where did you get that background? I'm like, well, I made it. And they're like, really? Well, can you send it to me? I'm like, why? What are you trying to do? Are you trying to impersonate me? And apparently, I remember the situation I remember this happening was, I think they were making like a Matt Casey theme for their DS or something, and I was like, okay, well, that's kind of cool, so I'll let him have it. Yeah. Fuck pirating games. All my homies be pirating fonts. That's what I'm saying. The free version makes its users look like idiot. I almost wonder if it's like, this could be a mistake, but it also could be like a form of DRM. You know that those games where they used to, if they detected they were pirated, they would just like stop working in subtle ways, or they would like glitch in subtle ways. I almost wonder if this is that. Like, this is just a way for Guy Bury to know, like, you didn't pay for the Pro version. You're using this in a commercial situation. Yeah. Spyro. I was thinking, yes, Spyro is one of them. There's that, I think Game Hut made a game where if it detected it was pirated, it would work, but then like one of the crucial platforms would be like, it would just remove the collider from it, so you couldn't beat the game. I think Serious Sam 3 has something where if it detects it's pirated, it'll like an invulnerable or invincible enemy will appear and like and kill you, stuff like that. Clive finally returned from voting. I did. I finally returned. I went voting. I got milk and cigarettes. And who knew if I was going to come back? But eventually I did. Oh yeah, Arkham Asylum makes Batman's cape not work. Yeah, stuff like that. I almost wonder if this is that. This is like a subtle way that like the user might not know that this is an indication that they didn't pay for it, but the guy, the maintainer, what do you call someone that makes fonts? A fonter? He would know, right? That's what I'm wondering. Were there democracy sausages? No. We actually, I mentioned earlier, we a friend and I joked that we would like, because I ended up. A friend ended up tagging along because he was interested to see how it all worked. We joked that we should ask about where's the democracy sausage after voting, but we didn't because well, firstly, I think it just slipped our minds, but secondly, it probably would have been a little cringy to be like, hey, where's the sausage sizzle? Typeface designer. Okay, that makes sense. type foundries. Is that this guy? Is he a foundry? I thought a foundry would be a company. I should activate my Mac KC. No, maybe you should activate your Mac KC. Have you ever thought about that? Foundry is a company. Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay. All right. What else did I do? I did do something else. I have been cleaning up a little bit. I've been going through stuff, and that's why I was looking at the PS2s on Thursday. Is I was trying to find. I'm just trying to like cut down my collection a little bit. I realized I have 7 PS2s, which is just stupid. Like, that's just too many. I mean, they were all cheap. It's not like I'm broke because I have them. I picked every one of them I would have picked up because it was just like $10 and like untested. I was like, that could be interesting, haha. But then it's just like, you know, it's too many. It's too many. I feel like there's no real reason I should have more than 3 of anything. Like, I can kind of get having a main one and a backup and maybe a backup of a backup. But beyond that, it's just silly. Even like, you could even argue beyond 2 is silly. You could even argue beyond 1 is silly. EU, Japanese, and US? Yeah, maybe, actually, maybe. I mean, it's like a 50-50 split between PAL consoles and US consoles. Add them up, make the PS14. Now we're talking. Matt, where did you get the Sego UI font for the Activate Mac KC? I doubt you have a license for that. You know, it was just on my computer. You know, it's just I don't know how it got there, and then I also copied it to Linux because it wasn't on my computer anymore. I clearly I had it. Yeah, a PS2 cluster, that would be fun. Mine crypto. The problem with crypto is it's all about like. You can get computing power for cheap, in that you can get old computers for cheap, but what you really want, like, then there's the long-term running cost of electricity, and a newer computer will be able to do more processing for the same electricity cost. So at some point it cancels out, and you're better off getting the newer hardware. So that's the only problem. That's the only issue with that. What's the standard Australia uses? It's PAL. We mostly import stuff from the UK. However, interestingly, we never got SCART. We followed the American model of we basically jumped straight from composite to HDMI. Like, yes, there was S-video and component in between, but like most people didn't. Only enthusiasts had those. Most people jumped straight from composite to HDMI. I don't know why we never got SCART. When will you repair that PS2 that someone came on? When I get back, I'll look at that again. It's literally just sitting on my shelf. I've been doing other stuff in the meantime. Pirate the electricity. I did once. I briefly had an office where the electricity was free. You know, in theory, I could have mined crypto there, and like it probably would have. If I had to pay for the electricity, it probably would have been a net loss. But because they were paying for the electricity, it's like. It's their loss and my gain. Yeah. The only downside of SCART is the French made. Ah, shit. True. No wonder we didn't want to use it. SCART doesn't have a reversible connector, so it wouldn't work in Australia. That makes sense. Now, okay. I get it now. Now, alright. That makes a lot of sense. Speaking of fonts, I do have to say, I've been playing around with... I think I mentioned in my last video, I was playing around with MSN and AIM, like server emulators. People have made server emulators so you can use the old clients on on your server. I'm playing around with that, and you know what? It's so funny. I know it's super chaotic. It's kind of ridiculous, but it's so funny that you can actually set your font on those. So you can set it to like Comic Sans. I set mine to you know what is it? Segoe. How do you actually pronounce that? I think I say Sego, but like I think that's wrong. Sego. It's Sego according to Wikipedia. Yeah. I set it to MS Sans Serif so that it would look like the Windows 9X font as well. There's so many good memes you can do. Yeah, MSN let you set a font and color. It was so based. Why did we ever upgrade from it? All you can do on Discord is type in the same goddamn GG Sans every message. It's bullshit. Look what they took from us. I set mine to use the Fortnite font. It was incredible. Hell yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You know what? I'm getting off Discord. If anyone wants to talk to me, they can add me on MSN. Okay, all right. That's how it is from now on. SCART is great, but no modern TVs have it anymore. Composite is more common on modern TVs in the UK. That's interesting. Aren't there? Well, I guess nowadays you'd use like the SCART Retro Tink, and then like just as long as your thing has HDMI. Isn't this the same song as earlier? Was that a different song? Might be. Here we go. MSN. I wasn't even born in that era. I was at the very tail end of MSN when I got on. In theory, when I got on, it was called Windows Live Messenger, but fuck that name. Fuck Windows Live. All my homies hate Windows Live. Go for it. Hell yeah, hell yeah. Yeah, I might actually add you on Escargo. What? It's 2012. Okay. Oh, Yahoo Messenger has a similar feature. I never actually used Yahoo Messenger. I never even used AIM. My closest encounter with AIM before trying the server emulator was, I think, I used to see it on Newgrounds. I used to see like when people would make a Windows parody, like Windows RG or something, they would re-implement AIM, and it would be like, yeah, it would be something like that. Yeah, I gotta set up like, that's what I should do. I should, you know, rather than say like my Discord is this, I should just say contact me on MSN. That should just be how it works. He was shockingly chill. Hell yeah. He's the guy that does all the viruses, right? Because I remember I looked into him when I was trying to get a virus installed on Windows 98. And I was failing the whole time. Yeah. A Windows tier list, that could be fun, yeah. Every time I installed Arch Linux, I had an issue where YouTube videos would just not play. Did you ever have this problem also? I think I fixed it. I never had that problem, no. I mean, if stuff doesn't play, it's frequently like a sound problem, I think. It just means that it's waiting for the sound context to be created, but it just can't. That's usually what I find, but it could be anything. Do in your mom domain. Yes, yes, there will be a do in your mom domain. I'm like halfway through, like I've set up bits and pieces of that, but yeah, but I haven't finalized it yet. Linux sound drive. You know, it's gotten better. I have to say, before it was a bit of a meme, but I think, you know, Pipewire, even though it's not done yet, I think it's pretty good. It's getting pretty reasonable. They killed MSN for Skype, and now Skype is basically useless. Well, yeah, they're even going to kill Skype. I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but Skype. Microsoft has it has a whole page of like, what's the difference between Skype, Microsoft Teams, and Skype for Business? Well, turns out there isn't much of one, and Skype for Business is going to be replaced soon. It's going to be cut down. So yeah, Skype might gradually die off too. I mean, at least this has been confirmed to die off. Skype itself might die off soon too. Yeah. Come on, Linux. That usually works well for me. True. Yeah, what's interesting is that I remember Skype. Most of the time that I used Skype was pre-acquisition. Like I remember, I know the acquisition happened sometime around 2011, and I think that was I was using Skype when the time when I would go home after school. I would get on Skype with my friends and we'd play Minecraft all night. That was like all through 2011, and so I guess through the time I used it, Microsoft bought it. But I mostly remember it from before that. Yeah, it's interesting to think that, hang on, when was Skype made? Has it been a Microsoft property longer than it wasn't? 2000, yeah, it has. So 2011 minus, it was released in 2003. So 8 years independent, and then 12 years now as a Microsoft property. But I mostly remember it pre-Microsoft, yeah. eBay owned Skype at one point? Really? Well, I know, like, that reminds me of Tumblr. Tumblr has had a revolving door of owners as well. Oh yeah, I went through my collection. I found these old Game Boys that I have. I have two, as you would have seen these in the videos, I have two Game Boy Pockets. And I have this Game Boy Advance SP that I don't think I've ever made a video about. It's a green one. This is, as far as I know, Australia exclusive. I think the rest of the world got something similar, but it was like a Pokemon. It had a Pokemon etched on it, and it was something. It's some kind of special. This is, I think, like Australian cricket green. Oh, it's emerald green if you want to get technical, but I believe. Hang on, where's my? Yeah. But Australia kind of has like these national yellow and green colors for like green and gold. That's what they call it. Yeah. Oh, these are the national colors of Australia. I didn't actually know that. I knew that they were like cricket colors, but I didn't know why. Yeah, Australian cricket team. I see. Okay, so it's kind of both. They're cricket colors, but they kind of, I guess, got adopted as national colors. So I kind of assumed that it's this green. Like it's cricket green that they're going for with this, which is kind of funny because my whole background is green right now. Hang on, there, maybe now it'll stand out a little bit more. I think it's cricket green, and it's pretty cool. You know, I never had an Advance SP when I was growing up. I always wanted one. I had friends that had them, and I was. This is why I never played any Portal games as a kid beyond the Game Boy Color, because that's all I had, and then. When I was like, I really want an Game Boy Advance, my parents were like, oh, that's a bit expensive, isn't it? So no. But yeah, I remember my friend, he played Pokemon Yellow all the time on here, and he stretched the screen out because I guess he preferred it that way. So I remember, I always remember Pokemon being really wide on his Game Boy. So yeah, I managed to find this, and it's pretty cool. The only thing that's kind of iffy is like it's a bit scratched up. It's not in the greatest condition. And at one point, it belonged to the one thing we like. Sometimes it's fun to look at old electronics and like do a bit of archaeology. Like, how did this happen? How did it become like this? You know, who do you think owned this? Well, here we actually have a pretty good idea. It was owned by. Oh gosh, it's not going to focus. It was owned by Samantha, which is good to know. Thanks, Samantha. I really appreciate your Game Boy Advance SP. Yeah. So, but I've been considering, you know, these Game Boy Pockets. I've been considering, you know, I don't know if I'd ever really use them. You know, they're a lot of fun, but I'm considering selling them off. Until I found that apparently they're not actually, the Game Boy Pocket is not actually that valuable. It's all about like the color and the Advance, I think. The Pocket, I think, sells for about $30. And for $30, maybe I'll just keep them. Find her. Good idea. Can I track down the Samantha from the Game Boy Advance SP? Oh, you wanted a clear Game Boy Pocket? Those are fun. Neither of these are clear. I've just got a silver and a... Wait. It's such a similar green. Actually, this is more emerald. This is more like teal. I was wondering if they're like trying to go for the same thing. No, I don't think so. Listen, the last thing we need right now is another YouTuber shows up at someone's house drama. Okay, you're right, you're right. You know, I'd at least like... I'd send them an email before I showed up, alright, you know? I'm not that callous. I'm, you know, yeah. Yeah, and Game Boy is very easy to emulate. I mean, the original Game Boy, which is basically this. I mean, the Pocket is just a downsized original Game Boy. It's unbelievably simple. Same with the NES. I mean, you can build an NES from scratch. I've actually always wanted to do this. I think I even bought some of the components to do it. To buy a to build an entirely new NES from you need to print a PCB. You need to and then but all most of the parts are standard. The CPU and the GPU. You either have to salvage from a real NES, or you can buy some clones off like AliExpress that are not quite as good, but they get the job done. But in theory, you can otherwise build a completely new NES. Not a React channel either. Guys, would you watch me if I wore some glasses and I like, you know, would you still watch me? The Lite is probably the most expensive Game Boy just because of it being Japanese exclusive and it being so close to the colors release. Interesting. I'll be honest, I completely forgot the Game Boy Lite existed. Yeah, you're right. I remember I almost, you know, I just said I struggled to convince my parents to buy me a Game Boy Advance. I almost convinced them to buy a Micro, because the Micro was significantly cheaper. And it was like on sale, I think, at Dick Smith Electronics in Australia. And I think I at least got my mother to consider it. I think she might have like called up the store and been like, you know, what's the deal with this? But I think the conclusion was still, no, it's too expensive. And to be honest, I don't know if I would have loved to have been able to play Game Boy Advance games, but I don't know if the Micro is quite as nice as the real Advance or the SP. But I didn't know at the time. I was 9 years old. I just wanted to play Pokemon Emerald or whatever. I just wanted to upgrade to 3rd gen finally. Just remake the CPU and GPU. Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I'll grind my own silicon. I'll get my own sand from the beach. I think it'll work. Micro Dick Smith. Well, it is now. Dick Smith Electronics was completely hollowed out. This used to be like a big, nostalgic. We used to have a Dick Smith Electronics powerhouse near my house. And this was just basically, I guess this is essentially, it was powerhouse because it was big, like an American store. I think it was basically a Best Buy. Whereas the regular Dick Smith Electronics were like, you know, you could fit them into a mall or something like that. You know, they were smaller. Yeah, this used to be like the electronics store for us. I used to get my, I thought I was so cool when I got a Dick Smith brand 128 megabyte flash drive. All right, this thing was the greatest thing. It was none of these. It looked like, damn, I can't even. It was this one on the left, which, as it turns out, is just a really generic flash drive, right? Generic flash drive. I mean, they come in different sizes, but I guess it's an old. Yeah, it's just one of these, which is just you can get these off Amazon today, essentially. Yeah, quite literally, you can get these off Amazon today. But I thought it was the coolest thing. Because, you know, up until that point, I was using floppy disks, and they're slow and noisy, and they only hold 1.5 megabytes. 128 seemed like so much data. I can fit so many bitmaps on there. Anyway. Big Dick's Powerhouse. Why does that sound like an Australian porn studio? Big Dick's Powerhouse. Yeah. The Micro was so awkward to hold. I'm sure it was. I've never actually, I don't know if I've ever seen one in person. Like I said, I just wanted something that could play 3rd gen Pokemon. 128 megabytes for $17? Yeah, this is a thing now that like the smaller sizes are in so little demand that they're actually kind of expensive now, because I think it's if I got a 16 gig. Oh, interesting. You can certainly get 16 gigs for less than this. This might just be a particularly expensive one. But yeah, like, I remember I ran into this once before because it's actually really hard to get a 2 gig flash drive. Not really hard, but like most stores don't sell them because it's like who would want them. But you actually need, for if you're modding an original Xbox with the game save exploit, it doesn't recognize drives over I think 4 gigs, so you have to get something small. And it's kind of difficult to get small ones now, or at least like you have to. It's kind of a specialty item now. Oh, it's a pack of 10. Ah, that makes sense. Okay, never mind. Never mind. Getting a DS and a micro. Did the DS even exist back? Well, certainly wouldn't. My parents certainly wouldn't have bought a DS. I didn't notice a 10 pack. Me neither. Yeah, it says at the end, pack of 10. I didn't notice that either. Yeah, doesn't recognize the drive over 4 gig, yeah. Well, so if it's a pack of 10, then essentially, I mean, you don't need 10 of them, unless you and 9 of your friends need to mod an Xbox. That's the thing, though. If you actually try to get like a 2 gigabyte flash drive. Oh wow, you actually can get a $2 one on Amazon Prime. I don't think you could get this before. I certainly don't remember seeing anything like this before. $2 is pretty wild. That's cool. But most of these are packs of 10. I swear to God, this didn't exist when I modded my Xbox almost 2 years ago. Better stock up now. I mean, I am planning to relaunch my store. I soft launched it. I'm planning to relaunch my store and sell like modding stuff. So yeah, it might actually be worthwhile getting a bunch of these and stocking up on them so that people can mod their Xbox and shit. I'll sell like kits and stuff. Nice address. What is my address on here? Do I have an address on here? I shouldn't. I mean, I'm not signed in and I'm not. Oh. Los Angeles 90012. Good news, that is not my zip code. That's the zip code of whatever VPN I'm using. But I mean, I'm in like the LA area, so it's like, it's a VPN that's close-ish to me, but it is not my zip code. Classic. $1.79 per unit, yeah. But then you have to have 10 of them. Like, what are you gonna do? Like, you're not gonna use all 10 of them. Matt trying to find his own address. I'm just curious what it said. I know it's not gonna actually have my address. I'm just curious what it says. Did you ever mod ship a V2 switch and is that hard? No, I have a V1 switch that can be soft modded, but I haven't done it yet. It lives in a data center. I mean, I wish, right? Then I'd have plenty of access to everything. I'm from the LA area originally, Glendale. Hell yeah, I like Glendale. You never know when you might have a sudden emergency and you need to mod 10 Xboxes. True. Okay. Let us, I'm trying to think, when I can stick around for like probably another hour or so. So let's take a look at .NET on Windows 95. Now, I said, I've alluded to this before, I've talked about this on stream before, I've talked about this in Discord before, I even talked about it in my satellite revolt server. So essentially this started because I maintain a Lego Island modding tool called Lego Island Rebuilder, and it was originally written in .NET because that's a really easy language to write stuff, like write a Windows graphical app in. Satellite what? I have a Revolt server. Revolt is basically an open source Discord clone, and so I call it my satellite server. .NET has been around for that long. .NET came out in like 2002, I think. But its original release was like on NT4, and it only went down to NT4 and 98 second edition, I think. There's never been a release for Windows 95. And I thought about, and so that kind of, it bothered me a little bit as the designer of a Lego Island modding tool, because obviously Lego Island is for Windows 95. And I remember I even got an email, I think, or maybe a GitHub issue at one point that said something like, I really want to run Rebuilder on my Windows 95 PC. You know, what can I do? And I'm like, well, I don't think you can. I think basically the answer is no. It won't work. Yeah, so and I know that I probably put more care into this than most people do. I think most people, when they write their modding tools, they just write them for like Windows 10 or whatever. But I like to care. I care about backwards compatibility. So yeah, so I decided. So eventually, I ended up rewriting Rebuilder into MFC, which is so. We'll get into this. MFC was like a library. Oh, apparently it's a soccer club. MFC is like an old. The name is not very descriptive. It's a library for like making graphical stuff, I guess. There's like Island Guy allocations. Yeah, pretty much. How would I describe MFC? So if you were to write something for Win32, the raw API, you have to write it in. It's Win32 is C only, and it's kind of difficult to write because, like, I don't know, create a button in Win32. You use the create window function. It's a predefined class. You use the button class is okay. You give it a bunch of styles. I feel like it's a little cumbersome to make a graphical app in Win32, and most people don't do it. They usually use a toolkit of some kind, and MFC is one of those toolkits. It's an old toolkit, 1992, and a lot of those 90s and early 2000s Windows apps are written in MFC. In fact, even Lego Island uses MFC for its configuration window. This is MFC. It's really easy to make like dialogues and stuff like that, or like multi-window or single frame like dialogues and stuff like that. Win32, I thought we were only on Windows 11. Yeah, I guess you're right. My bad. I'm from the future, actually. It's horrendous. I tried it before. Damn, you tried to make a whole GUI app in Win32. Yeah, it's rough, for sure. Buttons are Windows, yeah. It's a weird one. I mean, if it works, right? But like most people, I think, use a toolkit. Today, popular toolkits are like Qt, WX widgets and whatnot. Those are like popular cross-platform libraries. But MFC, as this Wikipedia article says, it's still pretty widely used just because it's kind of built into the whole Windows infrastructure. It's been around for a long time. People are familiar with it. It works pretty well. And if you write for an old enough version of MFC, you can target Windows 95. And that's essentially what we decided to do with Rebuilder, me and a friend. We together kind of rewrote Rebuilder in MFC so that it could run on Windows 95. And it does now. The only problem is Windows or MFC, especially the version we're using, the old version, it's still a little tough to do what we wanted to do. You can see we use property grids here, which is kind of a .NET thing to use a property grid, and we had to kind of use a library that someone had made a property grid like thing for MFC, and we had to use it. And then I remember I had to make some changes to it for it to make it work for our old version of MFC, and to tweak it, the functionality a little bit, because it wasn't quite as good as the one that just comes with .NET, comes with C#. And we've never re-implemented the music replacement functionality of Rebuilder, because that also used an MFC. Oh no, that also used a .NET feature, like a data table, data grid, or something like that. And I just kind of was like, all right, that's going to be a whole other thing. So I'm not gonna. We'll do that later. Maybe was kind of my approach. And then we started working on other SI functionality that I mentioned in my part 2 Lego Island video. And then it was kind of like, well, should we put that in Rebuilder or should we just make a new tool? And it's like, it makes a lot of sense to put it in Rebuilder, but then we have to like write the GUI and MFC, and that's going to be a real problem because like it just makes things a lot harder than using a newer toolkit. So we ended up writing a new tool with kind of the idea that maybe one day we'll like backport it to Rebuilder. And so this kind of became a thing where it's like, well, yeah, we got it to run on Windows 95, but at what cost? You know, it became so much harder to maintain. Everything's a Hund, always has been, etc. Yeah, pretty much. So yeah, that's kind of like I don't necessarily regret porting or I guess you could say porting Rebuilder to MFC instead of .NET, but it really did make it like, I think we would have added a lot of this functionality to just Rebuilder if it was easier to work on. Now it just became a lot harder to work on. So that's kind of the background. And then we were talking in Discord for a little bit about, we were talking in the Discord a little bit about UI toolkits for Windows 95, like what works on Windows 95. And you know, so we were looking at like Qt version 3, which is really hard to get information about nowadays. Like the websites are all down. Minimum system requirements for previous releases. Doesn't even go back very far. Oh, hang on. This only goes back to 5.6.2. It doesn't even. I don't even know what this is for. This isn't telling me anything about Windows versions. We're talking about WX widgets. I know WX widgets. Some versions support Windows 95. But like I've had a lot of trouble with WX widgets. I have to be honest with you. Like, in theory, it supports Windows 95, but only some versions and only sometimes, I found. So essentially, it came back to, our discussion in Discord came back to, well, what about .NET? That doesn't work on 95, does it? No, but it works on 98 second edition, and the first version works on NT4, so it's like, well, how hard would it be to get it to run on Windows 95? And you know what? I actually have, I mentioned this in the last stream, I actually have some precedent for this, I feel like. That's fine. Which is that, hang on, I have to find, oh, not here. I have to find a link that I saved. Here we go. So there's a thread from 2001. Yeah, June 2001. This is why this is the thing I like about forums, is that the history actually gets preserved. I will say, oh no, I'll get into that later. This is what I like about these discussions not happening on Discord, is that you can actually search up some of this stuff. Anyway, so actually this is probably a mailing list, to be fair, so it's not exactly equivalent. But basically the guy is like, hey, I would like to run .NET on Windows 95. And a Microsoft employee says, no. And then he's like, Sag, not good. I wanted to run it on 95. And another guy from Microsoft replies with a much more in-depth reply and says something like, well, you know, basically, we understand that, you know, Windows 95, some people are still using it at home. It's not really used in, we're not really seeing it in corporate space anymore, but we understand that people are still using it at home. It was not easy there's not an easy decision to not support Windows 95, but they essentially did it because they wanted to, they felt like, well, their explanation is, and I think this is more or less probably how it went, that it would have delayed the .NET to have to support 95. Essentially, they felt like 95 was too old and not worth it. Is essentially the answer. But he does say towards the end, he's like, well, technically, there are not a ton of differences between Windows 95 and 98. He said there are some, and that they didn't want that to impact their ability to deliver a product on time, but... Right? He's not saying it couldn't be done. So... so I took that personally. I was like, you know what? All right. I'd like to see how hard is it to get .NET working on Windows 95. Well, this was something I thought about on the 6th, on October 6th. It is now October 19th. Well, and I figured this out yesterday. I got to a certain point yesterday, which means I essentially was working on it for close to 2 weeks. Not quite, but like a week and a half at least. How hard could it be? Clueless? True. So 2 weeks later, here I am to say it was pretty fucking hard, but it was possible, all right? It happened. I'm gonna bring up Windows 95 real quick. This is running in a virtual machine, obviously. Don't get mad, I'm not running it on running it natively. Okay, so here I am on Windows 95. Now, I'll go into proper detail. I'm gonna make a video about this. I know whenever I explain stuff on stream, I'm really bad at like explaining stuff off the fly. And I'll do like a small write-up on Patreon probably, and then I'll make a video out of it. But essentially, it all started with just trying to figure out how to get Windows 95 to accept .NET, to install .NET. And that was a challenge in and of itself, because the MSI, it's an MSI installer, but it also relies on an executable in some way. I don't know what way. There's like a setup.exe and an MSI file, and when you run the MSI file, it says, oops, you have to run this from setup.exe. And I was like, okay, fine. So you run it from setup.exe, and it's just like, actually, fuck you, Windows 95 is missing this. And I'm like, okay, well, I could spend a lot of time trying to get the installer running, or I could like reproduce the installer. And then I'll probably need to do that anyway, or I'll probably need to install my own stuff anyway. So it kind of makes sense to like make a new installer, because then I can do whatever I want. That in itself was a big challenge. Just trying to figure out what the installer did. If you saw an earlier stream, I went through the MSI, and it does so much shit that you just have no idea what's going on. Eventually I figured it out, that basically there are executables that the installer runs, and I remember thinking like, this is like some kind of black magic, because these executables literally don't exist. Yo, Nick is too zippy. Thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. I really appreciate it. Hell yeah. So I remember looking at the MSI instructions and being like, well, what the hell is going on? It's running in executables that don't exist. And it turns out, and I was like, well, where are they? Where is it getting them from? I can't find them. I've extracted the MSI and I can't find them. And it turns out that they literally just don't exist. Like when you look at the log file for the MSI, it's just like, you can see that it tries to run these executables, and it's just like, could not run, does not exist. And it's just like, okay, well, that answers that then. I'm not crazy. It actually doesn't exist, and it's just running it for no reason. Cool. All right. Sorted that out. So... then like I could get all the files in the right places. Basically, it puts a bunch of shit all over the place. It puts the .NET here. It puts MS Core here, and some of these. It installs MSVCR 80. It installs a bunch of files. Okay, so I get the files in the right place, and then stuff still wouldn't boot. It would throw a really obscure error. Saying like, the application threw an exception, press OK to terminate or cancel to debug. And I'm like, okay, well, cancel to debug. And it's like, no JIT debugger is available. JIT standing for just in time. That's what C# uses, just in time recompilation. as in it's compiled at runtime on your computer. So it's like no JIT debugger is available. I'm like, okay, well, fair enough. It'll probably be really hard to get a JIT debugger available. So I don't know. And essentially, through trial and error, I kind of figured out that like .NET has a global assembly cache, and that's essentially the equivalent of installing a DLL into like the Windows folder. It just makes a C# library globally accessible. But you have to do it manually. You can't just put a DLL in a folder. You actually have to run a tool to like set it up correctly. And they all get installed to C Windows assembly. Now, when you're on Windows 98, it actually installs a shell extension to show these in a nice way. In Windows 95, I think I do install the shell extension, but it doesn't work on Windows 95. And yes, I tried the Better Explorer, the like Internet Explorer based version of this, and I think it still didn't work. But it didn't end up being really super important. So as long as the files are in the right place, which, you know, they're all like, you know, they're here, it's fine. Then we could kind of get a little bit further. Then what I found, if I go through here, I'll restore the original versions. Oops, this is new actually. We love the global assembly cache. Great. So eventually, once I got like that figured out, and oh, there's another thing actually. Before I get to this, another thing happened, which was that the .NET uses SSE2 instructions, and I was like, this took a really long time to figure out because SSE instructions are not supported on Windows 95, even if the CPU supports them. As it turns out, SSE, so in order to do like preemptive multitasking, this is what I read at least, in order to do preemptive multitasking, the operating system needs to know about all of your CPU registers so that when it switches from one process to another, it can save the state of the register and then restore it later on. So if it doesn't know about the SSE registers, basically it's equivalent to you can't run SSE instructions on there. So I guess I was getting a really obscure error, and I was running this shit through a debugger, through WinDebug, which is a really old and very terrible debugger, running it through this for like days until I figured out that, oh, it's running an SSE2 instruction, and that's causing an invalid instruction exception, which is coming up as a .NET exception. This instruction it runs, yes, it runs an SSE2 instruction on Windows 98. I don't know how that's possible. I know that Windows 98 supports SSE, but I don't know. I guess because maybe the registers are the same, so it can still run an SSE2 instruction if the CPU supports it. Try x86 debug. Great idea, except this is Windows 95. It doesn't work on Windows 95. And if I ran it on a newer version of Windows, obviously it's not going to work because this is a Windows 95 exclusive error. I would have loved to use x32 debug. It would have been my favorite thing in the world to be able to use a competent debugger. In fact, I even have it here. You can see I tried to run x32 debug. Nope. I would have had to go through a whole process of getting Qt5 working on Windows 95 to get this debugger. So I had to use a very old, very terrible debugger in order to figure this out, to eventually find that it's running an instruction that Windows 95 has no idea about. The instruction it was running, hilariously, if you want to know why, all it came down to was, I think I can remember the name of this instruction. It was running CVTT SD2SI, yes, which is basically just an SSE2 way of converting a double float to a signed integer. It's probably a fast way to do it, but yeah, because it was trying to do this, it was just to convert a double float to a signed integer. It was all falling apart, essentially. Are we trying to rebuild it run on 95? Well, not technically. Rebuilder already runs on 95 because I rewrote it in C++. We're trying to get .NET and all of .NET's potential, all of .NET 2.0's potential programs running on Windows 95. X32 debug could run headless. you could connect to it. Yeah, maybe. I did consider like some kind of remote debugging, but like at the end of the day, it just seemed like that would be even more complicated. x86 instructions are a mess. Yep. Compare and exchange. Oh yeah. I did actually re-implement my own version of interlocked compare and exchange, because this is on Windows 98, but not on Windows 95. So I did implement my own version of this, but that wasn't this. that wasn't this SSE2 instruction though. Classic. So yeah, it all came down to converting a double to an integer. So once I figured that out, I got oops, wrong virtual machine. Once I figured that out, I got this happening. Rebuilder would open. But but this would happen essentially. It would throw exceptions all the goddamn time. And for a while, when I would click details, nothing happened. I think I was missing another DLL or another executable. But I think now it will actually show us what this was. Unless it's just completely like soft locked. Oh no, it doesn't. It doesn't. Interesting. Okay. So this, oh, how did I fix what, the SSE2? Oh, I should, yeah, I completely skipped over how I fixed it. Okay, so I learned by running this through PCM, which actually emulates an old CPU rather than just virtualizing one. I ran an old CPU that didn't have SSE, or SSE2, and I found that it still worked. .NET still worked. So clearly it has a fallback. So yeah, I went through the code and I found, I went through the .NET DLLs in Ghidra and I found all the CPU ID calls. And I found I found something really, really interesting. I don't know if I can show it very well. So I'll just full cam while I explain this bit. I found something super interesting, which is that .NET has a dedicated function for detecting SSE2. Essentially, it runs an instruction called CPU ID, which is an x86 instruction that returns it can return a lot of information about the CPU, but one of the things it can return is the feature set. And then it says, well, and then it checks the bit flags like, does this say it can support SSE2? And of course, my CPU will say that because it's a modern CPU, it's a VM, it's a virtual machine, so it's just passing through the regular CPU essentially, or my host CPU. So it'll say it can support SSE2 even though the operating system can't. And interestingly, .NET knows this. It knows that your CPU might support SSE2, but your OS might not, because immediately after it checks that flag, it then it then actually runs an SSE2 instruction just to test it. It just says, SSE2, it runs some sequence of instructions to return 1, and if those instructions fail, it catches the exception and returns 0. So it also runs a function. It's just like, does the CPU say it can do SSE2, and if so, does it actually do SSE2, and if not, we'll say it doesn't. The only problem is, it doesn't do that all of the time. It does that most of the time, but one time and one time only, it checks the bit flag, but doesn't actually check if it will work. And in that scenario, that one situation, that was what was tripping up Windows 95. So, once I figured that out, I got to this point, which was, Rebuilder would open, but we keep getting this exception over and over again. And here's the issue. Without a JIT debugger, and the fact that it won't show me any details, I have no way of really knowing what this exception is. And so I was like, well, I guess, even though I'll be debugging, dynamically recompiled code, I guess I'll just keep going in WinDebug. I guess I'll just keep looking at the machine code and try and figure out what it's doing to throw an exception. So like 3 days later, I still couldn't figure out exactly what was throwing this exception. So what I eventually how I figured this out, was I wrote a completely new application. And I learned that what I could do is if I caught the exception myself and then printed the backtrace on screen myself, I could get it that way. Even though the details button doesn't work, I could actually print a backtrace using my own application. So here is small winform, which basically every 5 seconds will try to trigger the exception. And it did. And basically, this is how I figured out what was going on. And it has to do it in a really weird way. It has to do it every 5 seconds. It tries to click on this button, and it doesn't run the function that the button runs when it gets clicked. It just actually tries to click the button. That's the only way I could get this exception to appear. So it's because it's missing a function called notify win event in user 32. Okay, so once I figured that out. I opened up, basically, because we're in .NET land, we're in intermediate language land, it's actually really easy to decompile this stuff. So essentially, I just went into system.windows.forms.dll with dnspy, and I basically just removed that function. I stubbed it. I made it a completely empty function. And that's where we get, let's go back to assembly. That's where we get, if we go to here, I'm renaming this to .old. Oh, right, Rebuilder is still running. And I can't close it, I don't think. I'm gonna have to, try to force quit it. Hang on, I'll see if this works. Okay, I think it worked. Old. Okay, now we're good. It works. Just because of that one function. I'm sure that won't cause runtime errors. It won't, as far as I can tell. I mean, notify win event just like sends a signal to Windows that like something happened, and if Windows doesn't do anything with it, I don't think it matters. Like it's for some kind of system hooking thing. So I think nopping this function is actually perfectly fine. Yeah, and I mean it works. Now we can actually kind of use .NET Rebuilder. There are still problems. Notably, if I like try to if a dialog opens up, oh, we're still missing. Oh, now details opens. Now that we've like fixed the notify win event, now we can actually look at the fucking details, so we can see these exceptions. So it's missing get long path name, so I can fix that. And essentially, it'll just have to, from now on, it'll just be a process of going through and figuring out what functions are missing and what will need to be replaced or pointed at to one of my DLLs. And that's the story. That's a really poorly told story of how I got .NET working on Windows 95. Someone says all that to avoid MFC. I mean, technically yes, but I didn't really see it as a thing for Rebuilder, I have to say. Like, Rebuilder is already rewritten. And I don't regret doing that. It's kind of like, well, that's done. It was more so that, you know, future projects or maybe other people's projects could be done in Windows 95. Why not try kernel X? Kernel X isn't for Windows 95. It's only for 98 and up. I could spin this off into my own version of kernel X, but basically kernel X probably would have worked, but there is no kernel X for Windows 95. How I Met Your Mother? Yeah, that's it. Acting like you would ever get any relationship out of doing this. Yeah. So is it possible to develop .NET 2.0 apps for 95 now? Yeah, in theory. I mean, like I said, I still have to go through and like fix up some of these references. But yeah, in theory, it would be possible to write .NET apps 2.0 apps for 95. And what's nice about that is that .NET 2.0 is still supported in the latest version of Visual Studio. So you can write an app in a fully modern build chain with with the latest tools, latest compilers, all of that. You don't have to use any old bullshit, anything like that. You can debug it with a modern tool chain, and still deploy to Windows 95. So that's kind of that was kind of what I wanted out of it. Was like, yeah, it wasn't necessarily I hate using MFC with Rebuilder. It was just kind of like, wouldn't it be really cool if there was a still like currently supported way to write apps that would run just as well on Windows 11 as they would on Windows 95. Like there isn't really much out there like that right now. There's like Qt 3.0, but then you're using a really old version of Qt. I don't know how well that would work with modern Visual Studio. There's WX widgets, but again, I've had trouble with that. Some old versions work fine, some new versions don't seem to work on 95. They seem to use functions that don't exist. And then like you could write for old MFC, but it's like, and that will work, but it's kind of like cumbersome. So yeah, my kind of goal was like, wouldn't it be nice to just get a decently nice language to write in that would work just as well, where your deployed apps would work just as well on Windows 95 as the latest Windows. And I think we're pretty much there. That's kind of that was kind of my goal. And I mean, the C# works. The dynamic recompilation works. It's literally just going through and editing C# itself so that we can get this stuff so that it doesn't call any extant Win32 functions that don't exist. Electron for Windows 95? I mean, maybe one day. This has emboldened me to be like, what else could I backport to Windows 95? Like, what else could be fun? Like, it did occur to me today. Then I have to say, like, I don't know why this never occurred to me before, but like, it might have taken, like, what would it take to port like Mono to Windows 95? Like, because Mono is open source, so so it wouldn't be all about like having to decompile, having to reverse engineer and hack like fully compiled DLLs. Yeah, so what would that be like? Devs should pass a Pentium test. If some UI only by itself chugs on Windows 95, Pentium is hell gonna lag on a decent PC. So much lag. Yeah, I kind of agree. It would be nice if developers were still interested in... I feel like we have so much processing power now that people just don't bother optimizing stuff, and it would be nice if people did. I feel that. If you can backport Electron, you can backport Chrome, which would be genuinely useful. Yeah, I did think about that as well. Imagine backporting Chromium to Windows 95. That would be kind of fun. I guess you probably wouldn't get any hardware acceleration, but I mean, you don't need it. Java came up in my head too, but that's cursed. Yeah, I mean, Java is fine. I don't know, but I've always liked C# a little bit more than Java. So you're now not just Lego Iron guy, but Windows 95 guy too. I mean, there is an argument that at one point I was Windows 98 guy, because like modern laptop, ultimate PC. You might be able to count Windows ME on the iMac. That's not ME. That's not 98. That's ME though. Mono doesn't have any GUI.NET parts in it. Its WinForms implementation is pretty bad. Oh, okay. I guess you could maybe merge the WinForms DLLs from here with Mono. I don't know. At that point. At that point, maybe it's just not worth it. But do you know how many billion devices run Java? It's quite a few, I know. Rust can compile the Windows 95 and there is VC6 bindings, but they are unsafe. Somebody needs to make safe VC6 bindings for it if you don't mind using unsafe code as possible. Hell yeah. Yeah, I just think, I mean, I know a lot of people don't care about this stuff. I care about this stuff because I'm like, I guess nostalgia. I like to preserve my heritage, etc., etc. So I care about stuff still running on Windows 95. Yeah, so I'd be interested in doing more stuff like that. Somebody got Chrome onto Windows 2000? Hell yeah. Hang on, I actually, that would be interesting. Oh, this was 6 years ago. The only problem is that Chrome moves very quickly. So if you can get Chrome running... Actually, is this... Oh, this isn't even with source. This isn't a source port. This is a... hang on. We'll take a look at this real quick. This is just running the Chrome binary, it seems, with a with like a something like a kernel X, it looks like, or some kind of patcher. Yeah. Yo, Sebadav, thank you so much for the resub. Thanks for the tier 1.
Yay.
Microsoft Sam can't even pronounce yay. Like, all right. Anyway, Microsoft actually would care because there's code in Windows 98 that's still in modern Windows. Yeah, that's true. I mean, Microsoft more than most companies, more than probably almost any other company, do care about backwards compatibility. But they don't care about like being able to use old versions of Windows. They just care that the stuff that worked on old versions of Windows still works today, which is admirable of them for sure, but it's a slightly different impulse. Did it just say Cuggy, or did my ears just wig out? No, it said like, yay. Windows 98 decomp. Honestly, when are we decompiling Windows 95, right? That's a good idea, isn't it? I'm sure, like, in North Korea or something, they would enjoy a decomp of Windows 95.
Cheer 100, yay.
Nope, still not right. But thank you so much for the 100 bits. Hasn't that partially been done? Well, if you mean React OS, it's not a decomp. It's a re-implementation, which is slightly different. I mean, the thing about React OS and Wine is that they're doing it clean room, so they're not looking at any assembly at all. Which means that it's a lot harder. I mean, you can get to the same result generally, but it's a lot harder if you can't verify that it does exactly the same thing. It's a lot harder than usually decompilation means that you're looking at it, you're looking at the disassembly, so you're verifying if your code does the same thing. Yeah, and React OS isn't even fully compatible because it's a re-implementation, because they're like working it out, without looking at any disassembly. There's kind of no guarantee that they'll get that anything will work. They support some Windows 2000 apps though. They have a screenshot of some. Yeah, stuff works. I mean, I think it's about as well as it works in Wine, because I think they share a lot of code. But the thing about Wine is that it's a translation layer that sits on top of your operating system. It's not a whole operating system. So there's definitely an added degree of complexity there. I always thought React OS should have been a reverse engineer of 9x built on FreeDOS. That would be interesting. I don't know what the technical reasons why it wouldn't be, but I can see the logic. Last I checked, they're not really trying to make a full re-implementation of Windows. The project exists to assist with developing Wine. Really? I remember at some point, this might have changed, but at some point they were targeting Server 2003. Supposed to be. Is that true? Binary compatible. Oh, I guess. Yeah, binary compatible doesn't mean binary accurate. At some point, I remember someone saying, but maybe this is just conjecture. This is yeah, I have no idea. And this might have changed as well. Yeah, and Wine doesn't need to worry about drivers. That's also true. That reminds me a little bit of, what is it called now? It's Raven OS, which is basically someone's re-implementing Mac OS. And I always, I thought it was interesting that they built it on FreeBSD instead of when Darwin, which is the actual underlying code of Mac OS, is open source. Like, I think it's on GitHub. Yeah, but they do actually have an explanation for this. Oh, it's moved here. Yeah, so their explanation of this is that why BSD instead of Darwin? And they say it's hardware support, because obviously Darwin, like Mac OS, only supports Mac hardware officially. And the longer answer is that I don't see any real advantage to using XNU with merge and mark support. Yo, thanks for the 150 bits.
Fuck yay. Actual content tier 100.
See, that time it says yay. Anyway. Oh, sorry, you can't see. Did I have it on? Do I have it on cam? Oh, I didn't have it on browser. I had it on the VM, not the browser. That's my bad for having it in studio mode. Raven OS, which is the Mac OS reimplementation. It's so short answer, it's hardware support, which yeah, I guess that makes sense that Darwin probably doesn't have any drivers for any non-Mac hardware. Which I guess it's called XNU now. I can't tell if XNU is like the whole underlying system or just the kernel. I thought it was just the kernel, but I don't see any advantage to using XNU. We have merged in Mark support now. Big thanks to NetBSD, NextBSD, and the IX system folks for that. So the XNU approach just seems to add complexity and the effort of writing and maintaining drivers, considering how big the project is already. Up with the BSD kernel, at least for now. I mean, yeah, I guess. I don't know if there's going to be, I mean, it says they've got Mark support. I don't know if there's going to be any like other like stuff that'll pop up later on, any other incompatibilities, but it's, I mean, it makes sense, I guess. Sadly, does not work properly under a VM, no GUI. I know they're like rewriting the GUI. They used to have like they'd forked like KDE to make it like a little more Mac-like, but then for some reason they decided that didn't work, so they were writing like a whole new desktop environment, I think. Yeah. Story times with Daddy Matt. I guess this is a story. I guess that was a story back when I was doing the .NET thing. Like, I'll word it better when I script it. Obviously, my improv skills are not wonderful, so which makes me not a very good streamer. I have to say, but so I don't know why anyone watches me, but yeah, I think I mostly got it across, like what I had to do. I think the hardest parts was just not knowing how .NET worked. So I had to figure out like the global assembly cache. Then it was figuring out that they were using SSE instructions for no reason. Well, not for no reason, because I guess that was the fastest way to convert a double to an int. And then it was figuring out that .NET was calling a function that didn't exist without it being able to tell me that that's what was happening. I think those were the main three challenges. The top three projects are Raven OS, made with C, C++, and Rust respectively. Oh, really? Yeah, they'll have to use Objective-C eventually, I assume, for like ABI compatibility. We watch you for the same reason that people watch hot tub streams. It's all about your personality. What? Who? Me? All right. What's the time? 12:30. How long does it take to get to... Because I have to drive to... I want to drive to Vegas, which is where it's happening. And I think it takes about 4.5 to 5 hours. And I want to get there before 8 so I can pick up my badge tonight and not have to do it tomorrow morning. I'm a natural then. Who, me? No, I don't know. Whenever I listen back to my VODs, I'm just like, ugh, like get on with it. You know? Just because it takes me a while to formulate things. Also because of like probably severe ADHD, it's very common that I will lose my point halfway through. I'll be talking and then I'll think of something and then I'll be thinking about that and I'll forget what I was talking about. I'll forget what I was gonna say. It's very annoying. I did manage to get .NET on 95. You missed the whole story. I already told the whole story of how I did it. You're gonna gamble? Probably not. I don't really care about gambling. I don't really care about prostitutes. This is what I don't know, what the normal things people do. I like the food in Vegas. Like Vegas has a big what would you call it? Community world of like really really nice restaurants. I had to get my kid to sleep and I missed the best part. Sorry about that. I mean, the moral of the story is, oh, that's my capture card. The moral of the story is, it works. We've got the, what would you call it? The recompilation, the just-in-time compilation working. it's now just a matter of going through and figuring out what the C# itself makes some calls to Windows system functions, some of which do not exist on Windows 95. So now it's just a matter of figuring out, of finding those and patching them or directing them to my DLL. Like I have a wrapper for like kernel 32 and stuff like that. So yeah, so it works. It's just it won't work entirely until we get stuff like I think I did implement get long path name. I just have to point this to my DLL instead of kernel 32. I believe. Yeah. So anyway, the point is pretty much functional. You think you can make a Windows 95 installer for .NET? Yeah, I mean, I already have one. I just need to like get like that's how I got this working in the first place, was I had to re-implement the installer myself. But I just have to get all. I have kind of a mess of files at the moment that I was working with, and I just have to mold that into something that's presentable. Something that I can put on GitHub and something that people can install with just a one-click installer. So yeah, pretty cool. I'm pretty happy with how it turned out. I mean, it's like I said, it's still turning out. It's still an ongoing process, and probably will be, because people will probably find things that I haven't found or that I won't find. So it'll probably be an ongoing process, but essentially it does work. Now, here's the real challenge. When are we going to get .NET 3.5 working on 9X? Because that one didn't even support 98. That was, I think, XP only, or maybe 2000. But yeah, that's going to be the next challenge. And there's a lot of stuff for .NET 3.5. Like, .NET 2 is kind of old. It kind of predates, I think, widespread adoption. But .NET 3.5, that would be interesting.
At MatClit, any other Win9X projects we can look forward to?
Yeah,
Tier
maybe.
100.
I mean, I don't have any concrete plans, but we were talking about how this has kind of emboldened me to think about, like, what else could I backport to 95? Like, maybe we could do, like we talked about, maybe backporting Chromium, or backporting I talked about, yeah, maybe porting Mono, because Mono is open source, so it wouldn't be so much of a reverse engineering effort. It would be more of a just like tweaking the code, just molding the code to work with 9X system calls. And if you've got Chromium backported, that's probably Electron too. So that's like most modern applications. .NET for OS2. I don't think so. I don't have any familiarity with OS2. Somebody actually ported some parts of Wine to Windows itself because it's better at backwards compatibility than Windows itself. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what I did. I mean, the functions that I had to re-implement, I basically took my implementations from Wine. So yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah. So yeah, I don't have any concrete ideas, but it would be something I'd be very interested in. Backporting Chromium could definitely be cool. .NET 3 to 3.5 is supported on XP, Service Pack 2, and 2003. Okay, so it is XP up. That would be really interesting, but also probably really hard to get without working on 9X. But I mean, I always say this, that like software is software, code is code, nothing is impossible. It's just about like what, how much time do you actually want to spend? How much of your finite time on this earth do you want to spend making it work? So a lot of people, like, because you'll see things and people will say, like, you'll see Stack Overflow questions like, how do I do this? And people will say, like, I don't think that's possible. For years, people would say that about decompilation. People would be like, how do I decompile an exe into C++? And most people would say it's not possible. And in theory, they're not wrong in the sense that you don't just decompile an exe, but it is possible, with a lot of effort to claw some source code back from a compiled executable, and that was, so that's why I say it. I never like to say something is impossible. It's just about how much work you want to put into it. .NET for OS 9. I mean, if it's Mono, I guess Mono is cross-platform by design, so I guess you could. The only thing is, for me, I feel like I'd want WinForms, and if Mono is weird about WinForms, it might be a little bit. It might not be that great. But maybe I know .NET Core is open source now. Like, how hard would it be? And it's cross-platform. How hard would it be to port that back to Windows 95? Assuming it doesn't rely on solely modern Windows calls, like it's got to run on Linux as well and Mac OS. So maybe that would make it a little easier. Maybe it's portable by design. No, .NET does have WinForms. I'm talking about Mono, which is an open source. Oh, .NET Core does not have WinForms. I actually don't know about .NET Core. Had to install .NET 4 on Windows XP yesterday. I think .NET... Hang on, I'm just thinking about it. I think .NET Core... Well, maybe not if it's called Core. But I feel like you can definitely still get WinForms in modern .NET. Glad I could catch the stream. Hell yeah! I'm probably going to finish it up pretty soon because I've got to start heading out. I've already packed. You see, that's my bag on the couch. I'm pretty much ready to go. It's just about just getting out there. Windows 3.1. Oh, I don't know about that. As soon as we start getting into 16-bit territory, I don't know about that. Yeah. In the case of ClickTeam Fusion games, it's impossible because nobody's bothered to reverse engineer the actual code part of them, just the assets. Are they Mono or .NET? If you had time today, would you repair the CUM PS2? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the next thing to do, right? That's kind of the next project. So I would like to, but yeah, now, because if I leave now, 4.5 hours from now, this is what it says. It's like, I don't know, I should put in the actual hotel I'm going to, because that might affect how much rush hour I have to be in when I get there. Yeah, 4.5 hours from here right now. So I'd get there at 5 p.m., which is okay. I mean, badge pickup closes at 8, so it's 3 hours to check in and get my badge. It's probably all right. It's C, C++. I know this because it's based on... Oh, I see. That was in response to my like decompilation thing, yeah. WinForms is open source. Yeah, okay. So yeah, if WinForms is open source now, it must be possible to like do a source port in theory. Considering making a Docker container with a bunch of 16-bit tools for a project in mind, hell yeah. Well, good luck. The next project I do want to do is people were talking about it earlier. I saw some questions about it earlier. I think I've taken too much of a detour. I really want to get back to my Burnout 3 project, so I think that's probably going to be the next thing I work on before I do any like, porting Chromium to porting Chromium to Windows 95 or anything like that. I think it's got to be Burnout. I think that's got to be the next project. Need to see if there's a 64-bit wrapper like deal for 32-bit drivers one of these days. That would be interesting. Nah, fuck Chromium. Nuh-uh. All right. Well, the other thing I have to figure out real quick. I want to talk about this. Maybe you guys can help me out. What do you want to do for Burnout? Okay, so essentially, strictly, I am doing / have done a PC port. I'm like halfway through it. I'm like in the middle of it. But there's kind of what I want to... the intro's done. Yeah, that's true. That was the most important mod. Hang on, we'll go back to real quick. I'll show my... 'cause I talked about this on the forum. I have some videos on there. So if we go to here, essentially I'm repurposing CXBX to do a PC port of Burnout 3. CXBX is kind of an emulator, but it's more like Wine. It's more like a translation layer. What it's... Oh, hang on. yeah, you guys can see it. It's more like it injects a bunch. It loads the Xbox executable into memory, and then injects a bunch of its Xbox system calls and converts them into Windows system calls. So, in my opinion, it's a lot more like Wine than a traditional emulator. And so, in theory, the problem is that CXBX has trouble because they're trying to do like every Xbox game, and the problem is Xbox games make a lot of assumptions about the hardware it's running on, a lot more assumptions than PC or than Windows games will make, and that makes it really hard to make a one size fits all injector / wrapper for all Xbox games. And as you can see, you're supposed to be seeing 3D models here, but the 3D doesn't render. Now, my idea was that, well, they've done a lot of the work, but if I'm focusing on one game and I don't have to worry about trying to write, code that will work everywhere, then I can kind of just rewrite bits of Burnout 3 to work better. I could even just rewrite the entire graphics system and just rewrite it for, Vulkan or something like that, if I really wanted to, because it's already running on the PC. It's already running on Windows. It's been loaded into memory. It's calling Windows APIs. It's kind of a Windows game at this point. So if I, just rewrite bits of Burnout, then it could be more of a Windows game, is kind of the idea. And I managed to get eventually this. It looks funky as hell, but it does render. It's 3D, it's on Windows, it works, kind of. And this was back in April, I think, that I got this. I think, this is in-game. And it works, more or less. I mean, it's graphically, there are some issues, sure, but, it's playable. In theory, I think you could call this theoretically a port of a PC port of Burnout 3, especially if I develop it more. If I make it a little bit more at home on Windows, I can probably add settings to do resolution, and I could probably make it support more controller schemes. I think actually CXBX already supports X input. So yeah, it's the game, right? And this was back in April, and I haven't touched it since. I've been kind of procrastinating. I mean, I started doing the whole Lego Island decomp, then I was moving to a new apartment, then I always have random stuff going on, but I want to get back to this. Essentially, this is probably going to be the next thing I do, and but I'm at I have a bit of a conflict, which is that. Hang on, let me catch up on some chat real quick. Been wondering if it's possible to make a recompiler program that can translate 64-bit programs to 32-bit programs. Okay, I don't know about recompiling, but I do know that on the Mac, because they dropped 32-bit support, Crossover does some hack to get 32-bit Windows apps running on 64-bit Mac OS. It does some thunking where it I don't exactly know how it works, but they have a system of doing that, of making 32-bit stuff run on 64-bit, even though there's no 32-bit subsystem available. That might be worth looking into, but I don't know any more than that. You're like the essence of be the change you want in the world. All this takes a ton of work. I guess so. I've always had this. My personal philosophy has always been. And I think this just happened to me at a young age. I just kind of realized that, you can make stuff, I never really got... I feel like other people just don't believe in themselves. And that you can just, if you want to do something, you can just figure out how to do it, right? Maybe not be a doctor. Maybe you have to go to university for that. But, the stuff that I want to do, you don't have to... You can learn how to play an instrument, or you can learn how to you can practice and get better at just about anything. So yeah, that's always just been my philosophy. I feel like that's a philosophy that more people should adopt. Anyway, I was thinking the Xbox could perhaps emulate it via Hyper-V, and perhaps even building the Xbox OS. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what Zemu does. It uses QEMU, which is a historically or traditionally it's a PC emulator, and then just like shifts the things around to emulate an Xbox instead. Yeah. Xbox is essentially Windows 2000. I wonder why it's hard to emulate. I can go into that. I might go into that a little bit soon. Let me just read a little bit more chat. Would it be possible to drop in high resolution textures? Absolutely. Yeah, because this is like it's effectively a Windows game at this point. Like you can inject code into it just like any other Windows game at this point. So you can kind of mod it as much as anything else. The textures are interesting. Yeah, I think what it is, I think it's just GPU calls that are not working that are supposed to do like lighting or shaders or something like that here that aren't working. I mean, it's like relatively minor stuff. Most of the game, as you can see, is working. If Rosetta works on x64 to ARM, sure you can do 32 x64 too. Yeah, I think it uses just I think Crossover uses some kind of thunking or some kind of runtime injection to make 32-bit stuff work on 64-bit. I don't exactly know though. I just wish I had the motivation to do things. Autism and depression sucks in that regard, especially learning how to do things. Yeah, I get that. I'm lucky to not have depression. I'm probably not neurotypical, quote unquote. Like, I probably fall under certain neuroatypical behaviors, but I don't have depression, which makes things. I've never really lacked motivation, which is also is something that I'm lucky for sure with that. I think I've always just been excited about projects. I always just been like, that was like I went through that whole .NET bullshit because I was just like, wouldn't it be cool? Wouldn't it be great if you could do this? I think I can do it. That's just kind of it's always been how my brain works, I think. But I do have a bit of a dilemma with Burnout 3, which is that I can carry on fixing this stuff until a PC port emerges. But it is only a PC port. If we wanted to get like a Switch port, not really, because it's x86 code, it's Windows API calls. You could probably inject like cross-platform stuff like SDL if you really wanted to. You could probably find a way to get this working just as well on Linux. It'll be harder because you'd have to translate a bunch of DirectX calls into Vulkan calls or OpenGL calls. They wouldn't be as directly analogous as they are to Windows calls. But you could probably do it. But if you wanted to do like a port to anything else, it's tougher. What you really would want then is you'd want an actual decompilation. And the thing is, I have a Ghidra project of like PS2 of the PS2 version of the game, which has like a bunch of the stuff documented. It's not exactly accurate to say I have symbols for it, or we have symbols. I'll say we is in the community. We don't exactly have symbols, but we have something pretty close, and I was able to get that loaded into Ghidra. So in theory, that could make a decomp relatively easy, and that would be like, in theory, even better than using injection to like force it to become a Windows game. But it would also take a lot longer. And the lesson we learn in PC or in computing all the time, over and over again, is that it's not the best solution that wins, or the neatest solution, or the cleanest solution. It's usually whatever's the most convenient solution right now. So I guess I'm having a bit of a dilemma as far as like, do I spend a lot of effort now trying to launch another decompilation for Burnout 3? Or do I just inject some stuff into this and just make it work on Windows? And I guess it's not like you can't do both. It's just like, I just wonder, I think I have a bit of a feeling, a bit of a perfectionism to me where it's like, should I waste, is it a waste of time to do like an inferior solution now when I could do a better solution now, even though that would take longer? But if I could, if it would take, it would probably take longer, it would be slower in the long run to do both, but you'd get a minimum viable product sooner if you did both. So that's been my challenge. Well, that's kind of been my conflict in my head. Is like, should I proceed with this, or should I actually try and do it like quote unquote properly? And I think the answer is I should get a minimum viable product first. Does Burnout really need to be changed at all? I mean, it might be fun to mod in new tracks. I think people already do that though. They already mod in new tracks in vehicles with just like PCSX2 cheating. It's more just that like I like to port stuff to new consoles. Like imagine Burnout 3 on the Switch. That would be fun, and you couldn't do that with injection. You'd have to have do like a source port, I think. So it's not so much do you need that much change. It's more just like it's a more complete solution. Burnout 3 on the Wii. Now we're talking. Finally caught you live. Yeah, I'm live. Well, not for much longer, but we're just kind of talking about like the next thing I'm gonna do. Yeah. So, oops. And I think it's going to be continuing this, but yeah, I that's my only question is like, should I spend time on this if I already am like part of the way towards a decomp, and that would be a more thorough solution. But it's like I said, I think it's better to get the minimum viable product first. Yeah. Thanks. I hope you're doing great too. What was the name of the project for porting Wine to Windows? Are you talking about OTVDM? This is, I mean, Wine VDM. This is the project that lets you run, it uses Wine to let you run 16-bit apps on 64-bit Windows. It's very cool. I don't use it much just because I don't have much of a reason to use 16-bit apps. But if you do, then it works. I have tried it and it works, yeah. Can't wait to refer you to as the Burnout Guy. At your service, that's me. It's a me, Burnout Guy. Burnout 3 GameCube, absolutely based. Starting with a draft is better than trying bullseyeing perfection, knowing from art at least. Yeah, I think that's right. The only problem is that like this approach, the injection approach, is not really going to have much to do with the decomp approach. I feel like they're going to essentially be two entirely separate projects. Maybe they'll merge at the end. Like if we add improvements to this, we might be able to port them over to the decomp later. But they kind of, it's not like one necessarily leads into the other. Or there's not a clear path from one to the other. It's more like this one, the injection will be developed until the decomp is good enough to overtake it. That's kind of how it'll work. Are you the Burnout from Burnout Guy? Yeah, maybe. Uses Visual Studio 2017. Oh, does it only work on modern versions of Windows? That would be interesting. Problem is you get the MVP out and work is like, great, let's move on before you kill you. That's another danger, is that maybe I'll finish this off and be like, actually, I'm done. I'm going to move on to something else. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's the Lego Island Burnout 3 Shrek guy and the .NET Windows 98 guy as well. Yeah. I was about to consider trying to port this to Windows 98, but nope. Oof. But but Windows 98 in theory already supports like 16-bit, doesn't it? Or do you think this would support it better? All right. I think it's probably time to get going. Halo and iMac from 1999 guy. I wouldn't mind being the iMac guy. I mean, the 8-bit guy used to be the iBook guy. Oh, I use this as a base to port Wine. I see. No, don't go. I think it's probably best that I start heading off. It used to be that I would get there at 5. Now I'm going to get there at 5:30. At least I'll get there before 5:40 though, right? No one finds this meme funny except for me, but I'm gonna bring it up anyway. Stop trying to DMCA my stream. I already caught me once. All right. This will be me arriving in Vegas.
Is that the real time anyway? Is it? Shoot him!
It needs to charge. It needs to be
Oh, you
purple.
should have.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you would have on the shield. If you would have switched to the shield. Oh my god, like 2 more hits. Oh my god, get to this. Get to the. Oh!
Fuck. 540 anyway.
All right.
Shit.
Let's break it.
All right. Well, anyway, that's it. We just ran out of time because I have to be done at 540 right now. And
so what's gonna happen is
exactly 540.
Next time you see this, James is
Yeah,
gonna.
I'll have to be done by 5:40. Essentially, that's the whole meme. How much time will I spend? I'm there for all of Friday and all of Saturday. I will not be there on Sunday though, because as it turns out, like this was actually a really last-minute decision to go to TwitchCon. I kind of got my tickets like less than a week ago because I was kind of weighing it up for a while. And eventually I was just like, fuck it, let's go. And I was worried for a little bit that I wouldn't be able to get a hotel, but surprisingly I was able to get a hotel, which I guess is what happens when you design a whole city around hotels. But I found that staying Saturday night was really expensive. Like Thursday night and Friday night are all good, pretty affordable. But Saturday night, I literally would have had to spend an extra like $1,000, which is more than like it's more than like double any of the other nights combined, just to stay till Sunday. And I'm just like, well, you know, there's probably some cool stuff happening on Sunday, but I don't know if it's worth $1,000. So. Anyway, so I was just like, fine, I'll just stay up for all Friday. I'll just come home Saturday night. All right. You know, and then it's like, it's pretty chill. I'm not away for super long. It's basically like, all I have to pack is like an overnight bag plus a couple extra changes of clothes. So no biggie. Vlog or nah? Probably not vlog, but I might stream at some point. It would be like in theme to stream some of TwitchCon. Sleep under a bench, or a bridge. Maybe I could sleep in my car. Watch what happened on Sunday via vlogs. Yeah, they might probably even stream it, to be honest. So yeah, so I'll be there Friday and Saturday. That's the idea. I'll probably just be roaming around. I'm not relevant enough on Twitch to have any like official panel or anything like that. So yeah, I'll just be like probably just roaming around. Don't sleep. Sleep is overrated. That's true. I could just bum around like Taco Bell Saturday night, and then I'll be all good on Sunday, and then I'll just drive home Sunday night on very little sleep. What could go wrong? All right. Well, I'll see you guys. Hopefully not long after I get back. You know, Sunday or early next week, Monday or Tuesday. Yeah. See you guys later on. I guess I should see if there's anyone to raid. Gotta say no. All right. See you guys.